Hey everybody. It's been a minute, huh? Um, I'm going to talk about my health journey. It's been a lot, and I'm smiling now. I was smiling during it too, but um, it's a lot. It really couldn't, it really couldn't be around for everyone. I had to prioritize myself like 1,000 times, and that was hard because I wasn't that type before. I was the do anything for anybody type, like I'll bleed for you type, cry for you type. And kind of ran out of it because my body couldn't keep up with it. I was always doing too much. Y'all know that. I was always playing too hard, working too hard, and it was too much, you know. And I don't really have blame to go around or anything. I just life lessons, and stories and journeys. So um, just hear me out and take from it what you can, or just say hello and come along with me as I talk about the last, how long, 15 years or so, or I guess it's been since 2012 that I had the stroke. So yeah, let's start there. So actually, let's go back a little before that. So in 2010, I went to a trampoline house, and I was how old was I? Yeah, I was 27, and I had been running my business for about 3 years, and I ended up having, um, I was a little heavier than I'd ever been. At least, no, I was a little heavier, and I was still trying to be super active. So um, I think, yeah. So when I was 27, I had gained maybe about like 30, 40 pounds or so, and I ended up on a at the trampoline house, just going about it like I normally would, but then ended up bouncing off a wall, and my weight took me higher or further than I anticipated. I ended up, like there's two trampolines, and there's like the spot in between, so I kind of was like coming down from maybe like I don't know, like 10, 15 feet up, and knew I was going to be coming down on that in between. So kind of tried to like twist and contort, and I ended up kind of falling on, like landing on my leg in an awkward way. And at the time, I kind of just like sat there for a minute, and then I was like, and my ankle was like, if its ankle's like this, I kind of like did this, so the tendon here, I had a high ankle sprain across there. It was really bad. And one thing I didn't know at the time that may have been too is I might have broken my tailbone, or like our our hips. So we have our back, right? We have our back, and then our spine comes down and connects to both of both sides of our pelvis, and then our hips are our legs connected to the hip joint of the pelvis. So um, that part in the lower back where it connects to either side of the pelvis, this side was like fused. And I didn't know that for the longest time, because no doctor was like, "Hey, the left side of your pelvis is fused and the right side's hypermobile." That like it wasn't a thing. They were just like, "Oh, okay, hip surgery." Or they back. There was a lot of other solutions that they were offering. They were looking for degenerative disease diagnoses like MS, ALS, things like that. Um, and and in my mind the whole time, I'm like, this is just an injury. This is just an injury that I have to get over. And I have to, like, figure out physical therapy, how to like get through it all. And but also maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was. So I kind of explored all routes, because that's what you gotta do. You gotta explore all routes to see what it is. But it's a lot to try to explore all routes, because you know, like I was trying to get to doctor's appointments on my own while running a business. I didn't have anyone to like take me to appointments or no one offering, and or maybe I just didn't ask enough or ask well enough. I don't know, or stick up for myself enough at the time. Um, but yeah, so yeah, it was in like February or March or so, of 2012. Yeah, let me keep going through. So in 2010, I uh, had the high ankle sprain. I ended up putting a walking boot on because I went to go get health. At that time, I only had an emergency plan. It was like it was during the 2000 in 2007 when I started that business. There was no healthcare available for me. The entrepreneurial plans or like the small business owner plans for just an individual didn't exist. They were not anywhere near affordable. They were basically just for like I don't want to like they were for people who had a lot of money but didn't understand money. It was like that. Um, so yeah, so I went uninsured, and then Obamacare did come in and actually create at least some emergency plans. So I did get one of those. I did get an emergency plan that was affordable, but it was not, it was still a lot out of pocket for healthcare and stuff. So I went in with the high ankle sprain, and the doctor was like, "Oh, let's take an X-ray and this," and I'm like, you know, I feel like you're just adding all these costs on. I can tell you right now what it is, like, and what I need. Like, why do we have to go through all these steps, like these costly steps? Um, and maybe that was me being dumb and overconfident and not listening to the doctor, like at that point in 2010, my first introduction to like how to handle, because I never had a broken bone, like I have a concussion as a kid, and you just treat it, you just take care of yourself and you get better, so I kind of did that. I was just like, well, I had broken things in my hands, and like I was a rough kid and I just handled shit. So um yeah, so I put a walking boot on and uh let it rest. I look, the medical advice is out there. For that, even at that time, like, doctors kind of hated it then that people would like kind of look up and try to take care of their own health. Um, I got, let me not get into myself. So yeah, so I put the walking boot on. I wore it for 6 weeks. When it was almost healed, it did heal and it was feeling better, but I needed to go do physical therapy or start doing things to strengthen it. But the last 2 weeks when I should have been doing that and the boot should have come off, I had a trip booked, and I ended up on that trip just, I had crutches too for the walking boot, and it wasn't comfortable walking, but the crutches also, you can't get around in them very well. So they're really just for necessity, and I was using them like they were like like a sports equipment, and I could like go do more in. And so that was the problem, as I kept doing too much. I had a business to run, I was living life hard, I had a partner who liked to live life fully as well, and go do things. And so yeah, I was doing it all when I needed to be resting. And I tried to speak up for myself and be like, hey, I need to rest, because it was some of the things like I'm wearing, like even before I got the boot on that next week, now the next few days, I was like, I need to rest, it's really bad. And then like being drug out to like the mall and like not even be able to like walk around, and then like just sitting there, and it was like I would try to speak up for myself, but it was just deaf ears. And it felt like that all around, kind of like no matter how I tried to stick up for myself, people were like, no, you can't, just sit around, do nothing. And it's like, no, it's healing, like. And maybe that's what the doctor could have been helpful for, like talking, like I needed medical industry to explain to the people around me, stick up for me, or I needed to just figure out how to stick up better for myself. I don't know. But yeah, so I ended up with the walking boot. I on this trip I ended up walking like 50 miles in the boot. When you're walking in a boot, when you can't use your ankle, when one ankle's stiff, you're kind of like, so I'm like going around 50 miles like this. And meanwhile, I had spent the last few years, well, I was active. I was running stairs and stuff, but I was, driving. So I was also in the car, 1 foot pedal. And so as I'm recovering, um, it was, yeah. So I would even have to take off the boot sometimes just to like drive and stuff too. But yeah, I did get it healed. But the problem was my sacral joints got messed up. Left got fused and the right became hypermobile. So now my left side was like, nah, I couldn't like shift my, I couldn't like shift my hips back and forth. I had to like, I was like, and the right would just instead. So that's what was happening, right? So what ended up happening because of that is across the next few years, as that was fused, and I was, I almost kept reinforcing it because where I would sit at work and I would sit in a certain way that reinforced it because it was painful to, to not, it was painful to try to like break a problem without understanding what the problem was because I didn't know all this, and no, and the doctors didn't know all this because at some point I did get health care. I got married and I got my partner's health care. Um, and at that time, I really took advantage and just started going like appointment, and trying to figure out what it was. And I got some diagnoses then, like I think they called it neuropathy. I don't know if it was, yeah, I think it was neuropathy or something like that, like some other close term to that, um, like the precursor for neuropathy in the leg. Um, so yeah, I was getting like restless leg diagnoses, and I was getting medicines like gabapentin and things like that, even in like 2011. Um, so there was about a year where I had healthcare, and I was really trying to figure it all out, um, figure out because something was wrong. So in 2012, I went and was like, I don't know. I just thought, I don't know what I thought. Let me think. So in 2012, I didn't know how serious the problem was or what was going on exactly. So I ended up going to the gym and start getting a gym membership and starting a new workout routine with a friend that worked for me. He was one of my drivers that I kind of became friends with. He was a older Slovakian guy, and not that much older, but yeah, we got along, and we, kind of like the, I don't know, we're athletic type, so um, yeah, so we went and started working out at the gym, and I was having a hard time. I went once with them, and I missed the next one, and then I went to one more. And then that night, that morning, and that night, after work, I would close the business around midnight or whatever it was, and I'm driving home. Maybe it was only 11. Yeah, I was probably driving home around 11 o'clock or so. Um, and as I'm driving, my foot on the pedal is like I can't control it. I'm trying to like hold it on the pedal, like easy, and it's like jerking on it, and I'm like jumping down the road in my car, like, and I can't. So I like pull over. I wait a minute. I catch my breath, like figure out what, and I keep going. But like it's almost like this the whole way home. Luckily, I'm only like literally like two small right turns around like my office to my house, or my apartment. So I get back and I'm like freaking out because I'm like, this is like like my body's not moving the way I can't control my movement, like, and suddenly like my abdomen like seized up and tightened up real tight at the same time. Um, and I was having like under the arm here, there was like an artery that would just like pop out like so far, like that. It looked like this, whatever it was. It was just like I don't know if it was a tendon or the actual like arteries, but but it was like so I'm like almost feel like I'm just like curling inwards and like my whole right side of my body is like ripping. And I always would when I would go to the gym, I'd do it hard, and would always kind of like overdo a little bit, and then get kind of that like where you have a hard time stretching your arms fully, after you go to the gym. So I kind of anticipate some of that sometimes from things, but my body was so misaligned and off that when I tried to like the muscle memory was like, yeah, let's do the thing we do, so it was so ready, but then my I wasn't it was like a different frame, the same muscle memory. So it literally like during the healing, and when I tightened after the healing, it just ripped all apart, like everything. Like I feel like I ripped every single like ligament, fascia, everything on the whole right side of my body. And it was like weird. It was just the right side because it was, and it wasn't in my brain. I didn't get like it wasn't the kind of stroke where you have like a brain aneurysm. It felt different. I mean, I only say this in hindsight because at the time I didn't know what, any of them felt like. But, in hindsight, hearing people's stroke stories and stuff, um, I don't know if it felt like a clot because I didn't, it felt like more like my body was seizing up so tight that it was cutting off my blood supply. Uh, Instead, it felt like a continual, like blood supply being cut off by muscle fatigue or muscle like So yeah, so I walked in the door. I woke up my ex, um, and said like, "Hey, I think I'm having a stroke." Because I even looked jaundiced in that moment. Um, and I said, "I need to go to the hospital. I need you to drive me to the hospital." And it's I don't blame her because like she didn't take me to the hospital, and I don't blame her because it wasn't a conscious thing she did. You know, she was like the type that would when she was asleep when I got home, so I had to wake her up. But she's the type that just is like almost like blank sometimes, like doesn't can't process comprehend in like a sleepy state kind of, and just like argue, like just will do anything just to get you to stop bothering her. And literally it was just like, just lay down, just go to sleep, and just kept like telling me that over and over again. So she went back to sleep, and I like um, sat down, uh, and I watched my stomach, my belly button, like pull so tight through here, and it just kind of came over to the right. My belly button, everything was just to the right, and all of a sudden, actually, there's another part I don't want to talk about because it wasn't just there; it was like all down. But that was the most painful because I was getting like what felt like testicular torsion on both sides actually, and then yeah, most like extreme pain all through there, and then the abdomen too. So it literally just like ripped, and when it ripped, the pain actually subsided a little bit. But then suddenly my belly button was like an inch or more to the right, but like the visual of it, but it felt like underneath it wasn't. It felt like the something had disconnected between the I don't know, somewhere in between like my stomach, my abs, the fascia in between, all of that, and the belly button. It just something just tore all through there. And I did find out later I had what's called an inguinal hernia, which is like I said we have like two halves to our pelvis, our spine comes down into. The inguinal hernia is like a ligament that kind of comes across from like the top of like the hip bone or like the pelvic bone down. Um, and that partially tore then as well. Um, so yeah, I just had this like catastrophic fascia failure. Uh, and I went and I did lay down. And I did lay down. And it passed. Meaning I didn't die. But if I had gone to the hospital, I would have gotten the diagnosis is they would have been able to tell me what was happening in that time, and I would have probably gotten diagnosed with whatever it was that was causing this. Because it was it just the stuff, or was there a name for what this is? Like because it could have been there could have been a name for it. It could have been a stroke caused by a lupus, because lupus causes blood clots constantly, um, and I don't know if it was maybe kind of a combination of all that. Like I had a precursor, but so after this event, I don't let's like I don't know if let's say it was just like a exercise and body misaligned induced stroke. Okay, that was almost like a seizure and a stroke combined, kind of. Um, but let's say okay, it's that right. I still didn't know at the time what to call it. So people were asking me like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Something happened." And I couldn't explain. But like so, the day after the stroke, my brother calls me up. He's like, "Hey, let's go to um, our sister needed help with building a trampoline. So let's go help." And I'm like, "Nah, I can't. Like something like I can barely move. I can barely like move a muscle. Like I'm not okay. Like I need to go to the hospital. Like." And I didn't, or I said I should. I think I said like I needed to go to the hospital, but I haven't yet, or something like that. And he just like convinces me to go with him. And I'm like, all right, fine, I'll just fucking go, and they'll see, you know. So I'm there, and like, like slowly taking baby steps as I come to the house, explaining I'm just fucked up, like something's really wrong with me, and and she's like talking about the trampoline. I'm like, there's no way I can do it. She's like, just try, And I literally could barely like close my fist, like let alone apply like 100 pounds of pressure, however much pressure, strength, like they know I'm capable of that, but now all of a sudden I'm not, right? So I'm standing there, like obviously there's something, and they're just sorry, I'm a little bitter sometimes. Sorry. You have to understand though, like my brother and sister relied on me a lot as like the physical one, my mom too, like they all relied on me a lot as the physical one, and uh, so I'm not mad about their reactions and all of it. I'm not mad because they were losing something too. You know, um, I lost the strength I relied on, and they lost some of the strength they relied on as well. Yeah, every family dynamic is different, and like everyone's different. So like, um, I'm kind of like a grin and bear it type. So, um, and that's the kind of the family dynamic too, grin and bear it. So there's pros and cons to whatever type of and different ways our lives can go and things. So I'm not like the way I was brought me to become the person I am and to get through this the way I did. So I can't be mad about any of it. But during it, it was hard and lonely and frustrating and confusing and depressing as fuck. And so and just like made me feel fucking crazy. It's like all this physical things are happening, and like no one can see it or is aware, and they just keep looking at me like I'm this just capable person that's just like depressed, and that's the only thing, and maybe it's just my mind, and that's the thing that kept happening with people in my life was the like what's wrong with him, and like thinking they can fix me through my mind, and then just everyone pulling me in different directions mentally, thinking like they have the solution to like or the way I need it. I just need to be more positive, and it's like, yeah, you don't understand how much positivity matters, while they're being like really negative to me, telling me I'm being negative or something. It's like, no, my life is I'm literally like going through really negative stuff that if you want to hear about, I'll talk about, but if you don't, then I don't have to talk about it. But people would ask and then like act like I'm being negative. It's like, anyways, but part in sharing all this is because there might be other people going through stuff, and I just want to be open. I'm not trying to shame anybody about anything. Like I'm not trying to, I just want to be open. So maybe somebody going through something like this can understand, or people who might go through it soon, because I'm a little older than a lot of the friends I had in college and stuff, and not much older, but like things happen as we get older, and we're gonna face issues, and I don't know, maybe my story can help you all get your life right, so you don't make the mistakes I did and then feel abandoned in the end, So, um, or abandon like, I don't know, maybe I internalized some of that. I just kind of assumed people would, so I didn't ask for the help I needed. No, I did try. I really begged for help, but maybe not the right places. Um, and it was tough because how do you trust someone to help you when it's a vulnerability? Like I did. There was times there was people, medical providers and therapists and stuff who almost like offered to take me in, but it was like I felt like I didn't want to owe anybody something I couldn't repay. I didn't want to like be a I don't know. I worried about something what kind of did happen, but let me not. No, I might. It's so hard to talk about stuff because there's so many other people involved who got hurt during this, not just me. People who like you know, have their own suffering and stuff too. And misery finds misery. And I wasn't trying to be miserable. I was trying to come through this. So, yeah, in 2012, that first few months. So there was about 2 months where I was almost bedridden, but I still had the business and I was struggling. So I was basically putting more of the work on to the staff and just closing sometimes. I would work from home more, and I was basically like exuding labor. Um, I seemed lazy. I seemed like I suddenly just got lazy or something, or just was being like careless and reckless, or I don't know. But I just couldn't. Like I could barely sit up. I could barely, speak. And I mostly was putting calls through to automated, like just order online only that last few months, um, because I couldn't work, couldn't live, couldn't function, couldn't move, barely. And it was like I would zone in and be able to like have a moment, and I could like, okay, today I can get up and I can like get around and cook. But meanwhile, still like, I didn't have any help. Like I didn't have a partner who was like, oh, you're sick, let me take care of you. It wasn't like that. It was like, you still pull your weight no matter what, feeling in relationship. Um, so, so yeah, about 2 months in, I had gotten through some appointments, and I had the first thing they found was um, a first thing they found was first thing they found was a tumor in my stomach. It was small, and it showed up because they did a CT scan on my abdomen to see like what had happened in there, and that those kind of things don't really show like I don't know, maybe that they just weren't looking for it or didn't know how to look for it, but like the fascia attachments, the way the belly button displacement, it's called something. It's called an umbilical hernia, I think. So yeah, I but they didn't. I just like I was like, there's definitely an umbilical hernia, but like they just didn't, in the mic, and I didn't have like a hernia. I didn't have the type of hernia where like the intestines pop out and then it's like strangulated and they have to do surgery to like push it back in. That never happened for me. I had like so many smaller tears, and but I knew if I like that day at the trampoline, if I had exerted myself, my intestines would have popped out of my stomach, absolutely. And then every moment after that was that, like, oh shit, I'm about to lose my stomach through my belly button or through my groinal or through my just like this kind of side too. There was a few different spots that were always kind of like fighting and about to rip when I would do too much. Um, so I was always nursing these hernias, but I didn't know that's what to call it at that time. And there were doctors weren't really saying like, oh yeah, you have all these micro hernias because you can't really see micro hernias on the imaging test. They know that it's not. Maybe it's different now, but this was in 2012. Um, I mean, I have found people who talked about their health in different ways and said like, oh yeah, I was like I had a hernia for all these years, but it wasn't like extrangulated, so they didn't really know about it. Like so I've heard other stories from people. So yeah, I've heard other stories from people that just over the years that were like, oh yeah, it was that. So just in time, I gained more knowledge of what it was. So a lot of you, who were very involved in my life during those times might not have known what's going on, and still might not know, and this might still all be too confusing for you. But I hope you all are still with me here. I know it's a lot to ask for you all for like an hour of your time, but I'll give it to you. So we're in like May of 2012 now. Been about a couple months, and I got the I made because of the tumor. They wanted to do an endoscope and a colonoscopy to see, what else was going on with my digestive system. Because for like those 2 months, I could barely eat. I was, I think I lost 30 pounds in 2 months, maybe more, like 30, 40 pounds in like 2 months. And everything was like making me nauseous, like food wise. I felt like I was suddenly allergic to beef and pork. Um, Even butter. There was just certain things that just started to give me like really, really bad, like curl up in a ball, like um, physical pain everywhere. Um, like this, almost like the stroke was gonna, like the stroke type symptom was like coming back, and I was like, oh my god, I have to like protect it. And I would just like sit there, breathe, and like mind over matter, put myself into a calm state of like tranquil patience until it passes. And it would, until it would happen again. So when they did the colonoscopy for this, I was like, I'm gonna do something. And I had looked some stuff up about digestion and what might help with digestion and like, leaky gut or like what, could cause. So, and there was enough information at the time, even in 2012, that like, that processed meats were really bad for digestion and even red meat. Um, but like fish and eggs and beans and legumes and whole grains and leafy greens were all things that could nourish and heal the gut. So I went on a very extreme alkaline diet, but I was already extremely not eating, So, and I found like, oh, this works because like I suddenly had appetite for like all the fruits and vegetables and the high fiber foods. My body was suddenly like, yes, please. But the thing was, I didn't just go from like, a terrible diet to like alkaline. I went and fasted on accidentally for like months, for like 2 months. Had a colonoscopy where you have to like take the stuff to like clear out. So my entire system was clear, like nothing in it. Um, and like after that appointment, I, smoothie, uh, fresh fruits, juices, like grain bowls, with greens and all sorts of good stuff. I was still doing some eggs, and I was still doing. Actually, no, I don't think I did at first. Like I was, I mean, that first like week, I didn't. I went hardcore, and then I kind of like added things back in to see how they would do afterwards. I don't remember exactly what I did that first week, but it was an alkaline diet, like a whole food plant based. Be the way to. I didn't know what the term was. I just an alkaline is kind of like a thing. A lot of people, it gets a bad rap, but it's basically just a whole food plant based diet. So whatever people have to say about it, the whole food plant based diet is what helped, with a big focus on raw foods, overcooked. Um, I would still do like one cooked meal a day. So because I needed to like get calories back in, I needed to get nutrients back in. So I also started taking a B12 supplement and a vitamin D supplement because before that, like when one of the first things they did was blood work, and I was low on that. Actually, no, in the year I had healthcare, I discovered that. So I was already taking a B12 and a vitamin D before my stroke, and getting that back up. But it didn't do enough. Like even though I was supplementing to get that back up, it wasn't enough to like overcome the misalignment and everything that happened. So in 2012 in May, I was like, I did the whole food plant based, and like the colonoscopy, I had 12 polyps. But the doctor called them. He said there were hemorrhoids in your colon. 12 hemorrhoids in your colon. But I think that was just his way of explaining to like patients like what a polyp is. Maybe they know what hemorrhoids. I don't know. But for a little while, I was saying there was 12 hemorrhoids in my colon. But yeah, they were polyps. Um, and I don't know if they were how long they were there. If they were something that came on suddenly because of some like other, like maybe it was the everything tore, and then like there were, like I don't know. Be interesting. Have that looked at again. I should. It was tough trying to keep track of everything, keep records while I was like barely able to use a computer or walk or be on the phone or talk. Like every day I only had so much movement activity because even like the way it affects the spine all the way up, the muscles tighten all the way up to the face, and like there was days I just couldn't talk. And if I did, I would. I mean, like it was to the point that I knew if I pushed on, like I could, because I always was able to really push myself too far. Um, but I became very aware that pushing myself too far was going to lead to my death, and I would have died. I don't know how I survived. It was so bad. So, um, yeah. So this is really just his first like after the stroke in 2012. This is 13 years ago still. There's been a lot since then. Fuck. Okay, so 2012. Well, after I did the diet, the polyps, right? So this was maybe 5, 7 days, or it was the end of the week after the colonoscopy, like, and I'd been doing the diet like hardcore, and then I went and there was this new like shop that had opened up that was trying to work with my business. So they brought over to the office a bunch of smoothies, like it wasn't even a smoothie; it was a strawberry lemonade with alkaline water and alkaline ice. And it was so interesting because it was like the ice was like it didn't melt for like the entire day. It was crazy. And I was like, man, that's so cool how like if you change the structure of the water a little bit, it bonds differently and tighter, um, and I think it flushes better too. It like grabs on to more like free radicals and flush. Like I didn't like I still don't know quite like that alkaline water thing. Like I don't think that is very helpful in most people's like once you're doing well health wise and all that. I think it's kind of scammy thing like the alkaline water. Um, but this specifically because it had the alkaline water, but then also had lemon, so it was like a digestive aid because lemon helps digest, certain foods that break it down and stuff. I think it was just like the stark like acid and base, almost like combined with the foods I was eating and the way it just so, and I had enough fiber too finally. So I had been shitting blood for like 2 months. I had the colonoscopy, and then I don't think I had a. I think I had like one or I think I had like maybe like one bowel movement, but then the next one was like a thick stool, like a kind of perfect size, stool, not too hard, not but hard, um, and like the one your doctor would be proud of kind of poop. But it had all these red dots in it, about 12, right? I didn't count, and they looked like pimples that had like just fallen off, and like were in it. And I was like, "Fuck this!" It scared me at first. I thought maybe it was serious, but then I was like, oh, I think that's good. I think that's the polyps. I think I just flushed them out. I think they like my body like healed and disposed of them so quickly that it wasn't like a slow erosion. It was like just like shed its skin kind of. Um, and after that, my digestive system was like I had never had in my life. I mean, like I remember as a kid pooping blood sometimes. It's like in my 20s, like just drinking too much or too much fast food or something. And same, like not blood, but like I just never had good poops my whole life. I realized, and then suddenly I had good poops, and I was like, this is it. This is like the. It's such a weird thing to talk about, but like getting your poops right is crazy, like important. And yeah, ever since I had like perfect bowel movements, like once a day, big, you know, one solid, like, and and my health started to get better, like quickly. You know, the they had at this point now they had I had an appointment. So after I changed my diet, it was about 2 weeks later. I had an appointment where they do like the nerve testing and to see like how the body's sending like nerve signals through. So I went to that appointment, and they put kind of like a thing in your like your spine, and then into your like I think toes and the foot and spots, and it sends a pulse, and then it's so the neurologist. It was her first year at school. She does it, and I'm laying there like on my I think I'm on my stomach, or yeah, and when she does it, my back goes like convulses, like it's uncontrolled, like it happens a few times. She doesn't know what to do, so she leaves the room. She comes back, someone else comes in as well. And I was like, what? And she's like, oh, it's nothing, no problem. Give me information, like I don't know what's happening, Um, and anyway, she ends up doing the procedure correctly, or I don't know what was if it was me or if it was her, causing that. Um, and like, I'm like, I think that a lot of people who know me well know like pain doesn't really bother me, meaning like I pushed through pain and I was like too much, like I was too rough at times and like too rough with other people sometimes too. Um, but yeah, so I mean, too rough with other boys and men, rough house and stuff. Um, but so yeah, so the pain, or so they sent the thing down to my leg, and she ended up diagnosing me with neuropathy in the leg. But at that time, I was already getting better. Like I already had less of the problem. It was already healing. The neuropathy was like kind of almost gone. It wasn't as bad. Um, it was still there, but it hadn't healed all. It was like in the healing process. I could tell. Um, and so yeah, I got the neuropathy diagnosis, and the next thing after that, they said, okay, well, this might be MS because that's one of the precursors of MS. So at that point, they made the doctor's appointment for a brain scan, but it wasn't until like August that I had it, because I had to like go through appointment and then get so it was like following through all the appointments and getting the next nearest and all that. If I had gone to the hospital that night, they would have done all this immediately. I would have had a diagnosis. So and then known what I battling and overcoming and everything, But um, yeah, so the neuropathy in the leg, and then they did the brain scan. So the brain scan, here's the problem. I was like doing my diet, and I was having before this mental fog where I literally like couldn't process, like I could barely like think, and not always, but there was just like long periods towards the end of the day that I was just like not myself, couldn't process, and this started coming back. And my ex at the time was very like aware that I was suddenly like rejuvenated. So this was maybe like the end of May. Yeah, it was like Labor Day weekend, and I had just been like so bad, but I was still young and could recover quick, and I still was like, I still had that muscle memory, the athleticism from before, and I'm still myself. I still so as I was getting better, we're out at the beach, and I'm like, I was able to, I did like a one-handed handstand or one-handed cartwheel, I couldn't do both because my right was kind of messed up still, but I could still do like with my left do a one-handed cartwheel and be in the water and play and everything. But actually, when I was in the water, I still have neuropathy, right? And to a shark, that feels like that's sending a signal of like a floundering fish. So even though I was healing, it was still like enough of a signal. And that day was over on the east coast of Florida. There had been a storm offshore, and it was really a lot of shark activity that day. And the news even was saying like surfers were bumping into sharks. So all of a sudden, I saw a tail, and I was like, "Oh shit!" My friend was with me, and so I was like, and I kind of knew, I kind of had this like feeling like I can't just sit and wait because I'm a target, And I shouldn't have been out there in the first place either. But I like to have fun and people pressure, peer pressure. It's easy to pressure me to go have some fun with people, go swim and stuff. So can't blame anyone else but myself for that. But yeah, so I'm out there and I see the tail, and then I start to like, make my way to shore, walking slowly and like water about that deep, and a few seconds later, I feel my leg, big old shark tail, checking to see if I'm what I'm gonna do. And what's funny is I saw a video online of somebody that happened to, and they were only in like maybe like this deep of water, but it was like and there were smaller sharks, but one of them did it to his like lower part of the leg, and then swam around once, swam around another time, and then bit him. And I was like, oh, that's not gonna be me. So I took off. I swam as fast as I fucking could. So I'm thinking this shark's my size. It's not gonna come up and try to bite me while I'm moving, like that fast, right? So I swam as fast as I could. My friend's next to me, like actually walking, like running instead next to me, because he's like, I'm not gonna fuck around with this shark either, because I said it just hit me. I was probably more panic. Like I didn't panic because I was very like determined. Like in these moments, it's funny because you think people panic or like I'm panicking of swimming to shore, but no, I was focused and determined. I had a plan. I knew what I was gonna fucking do. I was getting up to that shore. So and we were a little bit out. So it probably took me like I don't know 30, 40 seconds to like swim all the way to shore. Let's say 30 seconds. So um, so yeah, and the way the shore was there, and it was a weird day too because the rain and everything. But when you get to shore, you're almost all the way to shore. It was like that, and then maybe it was like a little bit less, like you get close. But then all of a sudden there's like a shore, but then it was like a dip right there. So as you get close, you're all like you can't even touch the ground for a second, and you're unless until like a wave comes and you kind of like get you on shore. Um, so yeah, it was like got all the way to shore, and then kind of wave pulled me back just a little bit. But in that depth of that little bit, I got slapped again, and my friend was next to me, and um, at this point, the wave went back, so I was like pretty much out of the water, and just like trying to like get like kind of pull myself a little bit further. He's like grab my. And meanwhile, everyone else is still in the water looking at us like we're fucking crazy. So it was funny. One of the people in the water was like like a marine biologist, like study sharks. So she's just like stop, and they were safe. Like I was the only one at risk. I mean, who knows. But yeah, so that was fun. So yeah, this was all in May still, that 2012. Um, but but yeah, like I even though there was still some stuff going on, like you know, my ex said, like, I don't know where you've been, but I'm glad you're back. And she cried a little, and that hurt. And it was good. It was hurt good. Um, but I wasn't because there were still other issues that I didn't know about. So so yeah, we went on that year, and it was weird because things were getting better but worse at the same time. And I ended up um, going on a trip that summer right before the brain scan. Basically, when I came back, the brain scan was like a couple of days after. It probably would have been during that time, but I, had a trip I had already booked. Um, so I went, and on that trip, I overdid it too much. I went off my diet a little bit. I was drinking alcohol, which I hadn't been doing for a few months. Um, or it was like part of my thing was not to drink, but I drank. Um, and I did too much. I was walking too much, doing too much activity. Um, Alcohol was strangely helped, right? Because it's a muscle relaxer, so it would allow me to go do more. So I could drink and then be more active. So everyone was like, "Oh, he's normal again," and it's like, no, I'm just drunk and my body's loose and it's not hurt. Like the hernias aren't like pulling apart right now, like. Um, but the recovery of like going out and stuff, I would be bad. Take a long time. Like once I stopped, for the week or whatever I would drink then. So yeah, so on that trip, I ended up. I think it's because I had healed so much, and then I went reverted with just. And I didn't actually. I still wasn't eating beef and pork. I still was eating well. I just would like have fries and like some other things I was avoiding instead. And it's hard on a trip to get all the food you want. I wasn't getting as much fresh produce as I was eating, so um, and I'm at this like I'm at I'm at this convention where the meals are provided, and then so like there was one dinner, it's one of the last dinners, and the food came out, and I took two bites, and I started sneezing uncontrollably, and I sneezed like 40, 50 times, like hard each time too. I couldn't control it, um, and it was bad. Yeah, it was just like all in my head too. So I didn't have the mental fog, but suddenly I had like just what felt like the worst sinus infection you could ever imagine. So on the flight home, uh, I think so on the flight home we were a little behind. We had a connecting flight, so the flight attendant, yeah. Yeah, so we were flying back from Pittsburgh, and so we were flying back from Pittsburgh, and I was on, the pilot was trying to catch up, so he descended kind of fast, caused a little more of the ear, whatever. But all of a sudden, I felt like a pebble, very, very slowly. And as it was happening, I looked over and I was like I thought I was gonna die. Asked my brother for some Tylenol and or was it Advil? Yeah, ibuprofen, like the reduce inflammation. Yeah, so took it. I don't know. I think I might have even chewed it or something. Um, and it passed. It passed. I mean, it passed kind of before it took effect, but either way, it passed because I don't know. I again went into the calm, like, this is, hope this thing passes. I think sometimes my reactions save me. Um, so we get off the plane, we have to catch our connecting flight. And it's all the way across the other side of Atlanta Airport. So I'm looking for like disability assist. I don't not like consider myself disability or disabled at this time, but I was looking for like someone to help us get to the next thing, and they're like not helping. Um, so we have to like I don't want to miss my flight. We don't want to miss our flights. And meanwhile, also like I'm doing a little better. I don't have to like walk as slow at this point. Um, it was I figured out how to move fast and like not use certain parts of your body to not so and in rare bouts I could, so like I hustled, like I was almost like galloping, like my brother was couldn't even catch up with me, um and also like blood flow is good for so like it just started to feel good to move, so I went and I like got to the other side of the airport, and I go up to the guy, where like the flights been boarded, and now they're about to start calling the people who are on waiting lists. So I'm trying to get the guy's attention, and he won't even look me in the eyes or anything. He's just like, he finally like walks up to the desk, and I was like, hey, we need our this is our flight, like we have tickets, we're on it. He's like, you should have showed up on time. I walked away. I walked over to another booth, explained to someone else what happened. Come back. He calls us to board. Because now we're in the system. I had a lot of animosity towards that guy. He's just that shitty fucking attitude in that moment. Like, I don't know what's going on in his life, but like he didn't know. I wasn't like that. He just fucking hated people. He just like hated them. when you're so down and you come across these just like worthless piece of shit people. I'm sorry. Your life's in jeopardy and people can't even like give you the benefit of the doubt or a moment of humility. Grateful to the other person that would listen. Okay. It's hard being treated like shit when you're going through shit. So we get on the flight. We get home safe. Go to bed that night. The next morning, I wake up and yeah, the next morning I wake up and I go out in the living room and I open the cupboards and everything sounds like it's like when you have like a speaker that's blown. It sounded like that. Everything sounded like that. And I'm like, what's happening? So I get in the car and I drive to the emergent the I drive to the I get in the car and drive to the walk-in clinic that I had been to before, and the music again sound like broken speakers, and I'm like, this is so weird. It was like my own, So I walk into the office, and the TV sounds like broken speakers. The person talking sounds like broken. This is the first person I've heard talk to me, and they're talk. Again, it sounds like a broken speaker. I'm like, oh my god, something's wrong. It's like something fucked up. So I so yeah, I had a sinus infection so bad that like it was like it had like almost ruptured, like everything in there. Um, I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't ruptured. I don't know how to explain it. I'm sure someone else can. But yeah, so they're like, well, I already had the MRI for the brain scan coming up soon, so they just gave me medicine. They gave me some I don't know, some sort of like anti-inflammatory. They prescribed me some things, and I by the time I got the prescriptions, I think the appointment for my brain scan was like the next day or the day after that, so it was pretty quick. And when I went in, the doctor was checking for lesions to see if I had MS. That's the main thing that they were trying to look for, right? But again, like I said, I felt like the brain fog was gone by this point. So if there were lesions, they would have been smaller, like um, I don't know what signs there would have been left, because those kind of things can heal. Like there's people who get MS and then who have MS, but then can like heal the lesions and go into remission and they're not visible, so they have no visible sign of MS afterwards or of the condition. Um, Now this time, I wasn't aware, and this is in hindsight now, years later, finding doctors who have succeeded in different ways of doing that. Um, so I got the brain scan, and the neurologist was like, I have never seen like sinuses so compacted and so bad on an MRI before. And he put me on like extreme steroids and some stuff um, for a month. And so that month, I did the medicines. I went back on my diet, and about 30 days or so, I felt normal again-ish. It was back to normal. I was the no visible symptoms. It was almost like that June, end of May, June, when I felt like I was like doing well again. So I proceeded across the next year. Um, still going through appointments, but at this point, doctors are like, "You seem really healthy and fine. There's nothing wrong with you." And I'm like, "There's still something," because it was like it was like the hernias and stuff. It would still come back. It wasn't as frequent, but it was still coming back. Like I would get better, and then suddenly I would do too much, and it was like there would be a few weeks where I was like immobile again. So was just this roller coaster constantly of like, all right, and then I would even go out with friends for like bachelor parties or like hang out with like my old fraternity brothers and, um, go out and I think still at this time I occasionally would drink, but it was like maybe once or twice between 2012 and 2013. I maybe drank once or twice more after that. That was it. Um, and again, once again, it was just like because it was the only way I could actually socially go out and participate as if I had some sort of drug, basically, which was alcohol. Um, and then, but the repercussions kept getting worse and worse. The hangovers kept getting worse and worse, and it's because it wasn't just like, when we're hungover, we're pushing our body through things that normally wouldn't, or when we're drinking, we're pushing our body sometimes through things that normally when we're staying up later, and so it's suddenly all the sleep we missed we have to catch up on, and it's the way our body recovers and heals from things. It's not healing. So suddenly it's like I'm very aware my body's not healed. Um, but it's amazing what we can heal from and come back from. But and the one thing I needed during all this was rest. But I never really got enough rest. I think if I had just gotten enough rest, gotten enough help, got catered to care, if I had gotten like the in-home care and all that I didn't know I needed or how to get, um, it could have been a great help. Or if I just had, yeah, I needed help. I needed a lot of help. I needed a lot of rest. But everyone keeps telling me like, don't rest. You need to like push through it. And it was like, yeah, at some point. But first, the body needs to heal, right? So, but you can't just like waste away either and like not. But there was just so many problems. It was like in here, it was in here, it was in here. My hand, like I was always doing this with my hand because it felt like it was just like coming in. Like if I felt like I was going to end up like this. I felt like I was going to end up like this, forever. Um, so so by 2013 came around, and in like the first few months of 2013, I had been seeing orthopedic surgeons, and I saw one of the sports doctors for the USF football team. Um, he was like a kind of non-surgical type of like orthopedist, like sports medicine, and that's the approach I wanted to take. Because I was like, yeah, let's like if I approach this as that, obviously like I'm not getting the degenerative disease diagnoses anymore route. That's kind of like closed since I took personal responsibility. So let's go on, keep on that route, personal responsibility, and figure out like treat it as like a bunch of injuries or something. I don't know. So yeah, I called up the someone actually even said like you seem like you would be a good fit, so I got recommended um, for him. And so yeah, I called up his office and kind of I sent an email about the issues and I don't know just like why because he wasn't taking new clients, so I had to like beg basically. And he has his assistant sent a response that just said you should go to a pain management clinic, as if I was just like a drug seeker. And I realized that time like oh shit, like they're all treating me like that. They all just think I'm some drug seeker. So then after that, I had to like preface with every doctor, like, hey, I'm not looking for drugs because I have a life I'm trying to get back to. I'm not trying to just like replace my life with, you know, numbness. Um, like, just trying to get my life back, being treated like a pill addict. I never even asked for like pain meds or anything like that because it wasn't like, didn't feel like the solution. It just felt like it would make it harder. But I'm not gonna lie, when you're in that much pain, there's times where I was like, maybe I do need to make like end of life decisions of like pain management instead. Not at that time, but yeah, yeah. I never use pain meds. I'm also relapsed a few times from actual injuries and stuff that were prescribed just for like a week or two. Really, only like 3 times in like all the 13 years. Um, even alcohol, I stopped entirely. I mean, I'll have like a one drink once in a while as like a celebratory thing with someone, but that's about it. yeah, so 2012, 2013, trying to figure out the right doctors and everything. I had one orthopedic surgeon look at the hip and was like, "Yeah, it's bad, but you should probably just wait because it's not bad enough yet." And like, surgery is really tough. Like, if it gets worse, you can just do a full hip replacement instead. I didn't. I mean, like, it just that sounded crazy to me. Like, just wait until my hip gets so bad that I need to replace it. Like, no, I need my life back. I'm not just gonna wait around in this hell that I'm in. So, so I didn't do that. And then I found another surgeon that was like, "Yeah, I'll do the hip surgery." So they dislocate your hip. They like kind of like sprawl you back across this machine that just like cracks you, so the hip pops out. Um, and then it's just two incisions. I only have like two little scars from it. They went in and they reshaped the hip bone because it was um, hitting weird. And the in between, and there's it's not just bone on bone. There's like fascia between. So they kind of took the fascia that was in there and stitched it back, repaired it. Um, and then you know popped it back in and everything. So after that hip surgery, I I didn't recover because it wasn't just the hip was like a problem that happened because of all the other stuff that was happening. So um, I shouldn't have gone through with the hip surgery because it was the sacral joints that were the problem, and just repairing the hip without repairing the sacral joints was pointless and made everything worse and harder because they dislocate your hip and then it's and you're under for hours and under the anesthesia and then recovering afterwards. Like I had already had this whole area was so torn, and then they just like cracked it worse. So like all the issues that I've been slowly kind of not healing, but like that were I was managing so well suddenly just got exacerbated so bad, so bad. It was also like the leg, like the upper part of my thigh, like the inner part of my thigh, and the upper part all the way up to like the abdomen and low back. That whole area was just bad. So I prescribed physical therapy after a little bit, and like a couple weeks after the surgery, and or maybe it was like right away, I forget, but um, I'd go to the appointments. I couldn't drive myself, and I didn't have, my mom was working, and I had moved in with her at this point. I guess I didn't mention that part. So when I knew I had the hip surgery, when I scheduled the hip surgery, I was like waiting, roller coaster back and forth and so on. My ex was not up for the ride and kept showing signs of like backing away and looking elsewhere. Um, like looking for an exit route while I was looking to survive. And it came to a point where she was like, just kept finding ways to try to end the relationship. We all, I mean, people do it. They're not, people aren't always upfront. So when they're having feelings that they want to end something, they go about it other ways. And I had wanted to go through therapy and stuff, and she just didn't. And I was like, all right, that's fine. You're done. And I left. What it was, a month or two later, 2 months later, we did talk once again after that, and she did kind of offer to like look after me, maybe help me out through it. But I was like, it's been a year, and like you're not capable. She didn't seem capable. Like I just didn't trust her to be there for me through my physical medical stuff because I don't think she could have. Like I just don't think she was capable. And she already done it. Like she had already broken my heart and made me separate and detach. So I was already detached, and I wasn't going to go back. And and also, how could I have known the hip surgery would make me worse? Not the hip worse, but made everything else worse. So, because at that point too, what am I just going to stay with her to use her? I lost the love. So yeah, that was like, end of 20. So by the end of 2013, I still was like, barely moving. Like pretty much bedridden. The physical therapy was not possible. I was getting the hernias and stroke symptoms, and I knew I would end up with a hernia if I kept not doing the physical therapy. And it was clear that that didn't solve it problem. Years later, I did find an article that was out of Japan that talked about this issue specifically and said that people need to be checked for sacral joint dysfunctions instead or before going through hip surgeries because if you don't fix the sacral joint issue first, then what's the point of the hip? And if you fix that, then you don't have to fix the hip because everything, like moves and is aligned again. The reason the hip was unaligned was because of that. So, um, and I don't know if maybe I had a malpractice possible suit because of this, but also like this is the medical industry. They're just doing the best they can to try to navigate, like people. And um, I can't get too mad because they didn't know how to fix me. It wasn't like they, but sometimes you're supposed to do no worse or, not supposed to do any worse, do no harm, and they did more harm to me. And a lot of other people too. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there with different. I actually started to wonder how many people who have this kind of like locked up sacral joint on one side end up with these degenerative disease diagnoses because of this issue. Because once that happens, it presents different ways. When you get diagnosed with MS, they just check to see if you have neuropathy, which would happen if that they check for that. That would happen if your spine is so messed up that your brain is being constantly like, um, it's almost your brain's a muscle too, right? So like if your muscles are all like constantly just like you're going to get lesions too, right? So, and the other way is they test to see if you have immunoglobulin in your spine, which basically just says like, oh, there's a lot of immunoglobulin is produced when there's like recovery and damage, and so it's like, yeah, if my spine is constantly in pain, of course, if you do a spinal tap, there's going to be immunoglobulin, but like, what does that say exactly? So those three things are how they diagnose MS, and it's like if you have two of them, you get the MS diagnosis. But what is MS? MS is an autoimmune condition. So they're not even looking for the autoimmune markers, except for in the one spot of the spine, you know? Um, the autoimmune markers don't always show in the blood work. Sometimes they only show in like, in certain areas of the body instead. Um, lupus would show in the blood work. But a lot of times people with lupus and MS, it's just, they have this, it's just, some people could have both and only get one diagnosis. But either way, once you get one diagnosis, you can get help. A lot of people with lupus have other autoimmune diseases as well. Like lupus is kind of the catch-all, and then people can end up having other correlated ones. And lupus, the main thing is the blood clots, like that come back frequently with, and or the basically like repeated stroke events is a sign of lupus. So um, regardless, I wasn't getting any of the diagnosis because my blood work was great because my way I was caring for myself, like all the normal ways that they would have diagnosed these things, I kind of masked. So, and I couldn't just wait around. I would have died waiting for appointments and tests and figure out all that. So, just for them to decide to give me medicines instead of telling me to like do what I was doing. And they were laughing at me about it, like me saying like, oh, I think the way I changed my diet, the way I'm like handling stress now and things. I actually started getting massage therapy and chiropractic care. So 2013, I was doing these things, the massage therapy, chiropractic care, and all these things that I had been doing as well. Actually, 2012 and 2013, I had been doing a lot of that. So, but once the hip surgery came, I couldn't even, I couldn't get a massage. I couldn't go through the chiropractic adjustments. I was too fragile. Um, so again, no one knew what was going on. They just thought like, oh, he's just not following through with physical therapy because he's being, I don't know, obstinate or something. But it's like, no, this will kill me. I mean, I was like physically active and pushed myself through everything my whole life. So now if I'm saying like, no, this I can't, like, It's not just me being like, oh, I'm frozen in fear. It's like, no, this is real. Um, Mechanics. My testicle would pop up and twist back and forth. This happened probably 40 times across years. I have to lay flat on the ground as it was happening because it wasn't just that. That's a sign that like it was about to, I was about to stroke. So yeah, I mean, once I got other things right, that became the warning sign. Like once my diet was right, once I was doing everything else right, then that became the warning sign, the testicular torsion of like, oh shit, all right, I gotta chill, I gotta like um, just lay down flat, let it pass. It was crazy. It would happen like I'd just be watching like a football game, not very active that day or anything, but just like watching a football game, and there'd be like a big injury or not an injury, but a big hit, you know. And when you see it, you're like, that was enough to cause me the testicular torsion, like flat on the ground. So yeah, after hip surgery, it was getting worse, the torsion stuff. And inguinal hernia. The inguinal hernia felt worse too. I felt like that got permanently worse after that. And I had gone a different route actually before even that 2012 2013 before the hip surgery. I actually went to see a doctor about that stuff, the inguinal hernia and or the inguinal and just different pelvic stuff. I went to see like a general surgeon that was more specialized in like pelvic abdominal stuff. Um, the only thing he really had to offer was like the injections, like the steroid injections, like in concentrated specific spots. But at this time, like I didn't feel like I had the inflammation that like it wasn't inflammation causing the problem at this point. It was like so like that's a solution when you have like a lot of inflammation area because of an injury, but then also a lifestyle that like I was my diet was basically preventing me from having the inflammation as extreme that would that those medicines would help. So like an ibuprofen would still help me like daily at that time. Um, and then during big bouts of things, yeah, like there's other medicines that would help in general, but like the medicines were good enough. I didn't need the steroid injection, and he couldn't really offer anything else. It's like, he had diagnosed something called osteitis pubis, which is like an inflammation of like the pelvic area, um, and and yeah, so after the hip surgery, I was still off, and I had one doctor say my gait was off, like the way you walk and the way, So what he had recommended was that I put a lift. He was like a massage therapist with a few other certifications, um, and I people would recommend all sorts of things, and I check them out. And sometimes they'd be good, sometimes they wouldn't, sometimes I'd go along with it, sometimes I wouldn't. Um, and this one seemed good because the way he was like measuring, I'd never seen before. He's like the top of your pelvis on one side is here on this side. He had X-rays. He was it was like very specifically detailed on like how everything was off in my pelvis and my back and everything. At this point, I already known I had the scoliosis too that had happened because of all of this as well. So I had the scoliosis diagnosis in 2012. I had even the first chiropractor I saw knew that there was that too. They didn't explain it as well, but like I knew. So they would put like a block under my left hip to try to like get it. So I did all sorts of stuff to try to get this before the hip surgery. And if I had stuck on that route, it probably would have been better because I might have actually eventually got it because I did. It was like a 2-year detour in between. So um, yeah, so what he did was he had me put a lift in my right shoe, and it did. It brought everything up. It brought my pelvis up a little bit too, so they were more even, and I was getting around better. Because it did feel like every step I took with the right, I was like missing ground. I would like not. It was felt like there was a hole underneath my right foot. And especially if I like reached up the right arm. So it was just weird. My body wasn't mine anymore. Didn't move the way I used to. So that helped for a while, and it got me mobile again. And sometimes I would still use I was using a cane to get around because it would help, but that was like making me like it was making my scoliosis even worse, and causing more issues in through here. I even when I was driving, I couldn't use my right leg, so I was trying to use like hand pedals where I would like push the brake and gas, with the right, with the one or the other while driving. Um, I did that for a little while, like probably in like 2013, 2014, probably 2014. I did that for like a few months. Um, Whenever I have to get to doctor's appointments, I drive myself with these pedals, hand pedals. I like went down and installed myself and everything. I even tried to get like a recumbent bike like this is a recumbent chair, goes back like all the way. Um, I got this too, so I could try to like work or like live. Um, so yeah, I got this chair too, so I could like work or live or just function outside of like a bed. And it did. It helped me get back this chair. Um, and I tried to get a recumbent like bike, like a three wheeler, like actual like pedal bike, because I thought I needed to be physically active and do stuff. So that's a good way for me to get out, another way for me to get around. And if I did get, because I was at my mom's, when I get out of my own place, I could live in a city where I could just easily get around without having to drive. Because driving a car was harder for me than getting in a bike and going, a short distance. Um, I thought, but the bike didn't work out either. I really was just too, I really was just too fucked up all around, for anything. So everything I was trying, was like helping, not helping, a lot of dead ends, a lot of. Uh, so 2014, and I'd still get other little diagnoses here and there, and I think in like 2015, yeah. So in 2015, I ended up at the hospital again, and had this new neurologist, and he was good. He was really good. When I was talking with him, he was impressed by what I knew, what I did. He heard me out. We had really great conversations. He's like, wow, you're one of the most knowledgeable patients I've ever had, you know? Um, and he's like, hey, this might be ALS. So he sent me to a doctor for that. I got there. That doctor kind of mocked me almost, because like the patient before me was like severe ALS, and here I am like, you know, struggling, but like getting through it. I look normal. Uh, so yeah, he's like, there's no way. But I got referred again, like like later. Um, and the reason they thought ALS is because with ALS it affects more um, like in here and like in like the upper extremities, where like sometimes when you have MS or other things, it's more like you feel it in like the lower part of the extremities. And I had, but at this point it had almost like not. I was getting better there. And the only thing that was really left was like the core there and the core there. Um, I did start to wonder, like, do people with that condition have, like, is the left? I mean, once I found out years later it was like the pelvic joint was locked. How many of these people with the diagnosis of ALS is because of a fused sacral joint on one of the sides, or both, or some sort of injury that happened? I mean, Stephen Hawking famously fell down a flight of stairs sometime in the year or two before his condition onset. And also, when you were in a wheelchair and locked in that condition, you end up relying on like processed foods and things for survival, because you can't go cook for yourself. You can't go access a lot of things, and it's harder to chew, and you're weaker, and it's easier just to. So I think it kind of ends up being a combination of things where I don't know. I don't know. I should stop, because like I'm just speaking out my mind, and I'm not a doctor. But doctors don't know what the fuck's going on half the time either. I don't know half the time. Maybe they know most of the time, but they didn't know what the fuck was going on with me. And they frustrated the hell out of me. And the weirdest thing during this too was like mistreatment during it, like during procedures and stuff, like inappropriate doctors and nurses, and I'm not going to go into all that, but just know that like when men are vulnerable and weak, they can be targets by people with power. So by 2015, I was doing a little better. I ended up going on another trip to DC, and I got around all right. You know, I felt like I was doing well enough. I could do some things. I was on my way up a little bit. So yeah, I did that trip. But again, that trip I like, walked slowly everywhere. I couldn't take big steps. I couldn't walk fast. Um, Even the way I was like before the hip surgery, I hadn't gotten back to at that point. Um, and so I did that trip. I ended up around that time also starting a new relationship. Um, and I ended up out in, this was probably, I won't go into all that, but um, at least in that relationship, I was getting more help, but also being put through more. So, in some ways, I was like recovering. In some ways, I was being held back. But one of the big breakthroughs, the biggest thing that happened, which was just like probably saved my life. And I don't know if this would have happened naturally on time with the progress of my personal choices I was doing that eventually would have given way with therapies and treatments I was having. But um, basically, like anyone in my life that could have given me a hand once in a while and just listened and done what I asked for me once in a while could have saved me. Someone that was like in tune to me and made me their priority would have been saved, would have made me whole really quickly. So I ended up at this chiropractor out in Auburndale, and out in yeah, I ended up at this chiropractor out in Winter Haven, and he would do this thing where he would like say this is my back, these are my legs, he put me on like the edge of a table, and just like a here and here, and like in between, and just let me like drop. So it was like basically causing almost like trauma to my hip, my pelvis area, and like it was so. This one appointment, another appointment. I think that evening I was standing in the kitchen and had the torsion happen. So I laid flat on the ground. Uh, Partner at the time, new ex, um, came over and like she had experience, so she um, came over and on like my left butt cheek, she kind of like kind of got a spot where like the left where that sacral joint is, and she was just kind of there holding lightly because that would give relief so the torsion would stop, um, and kind of like hold a little longer and go a little further, and all of a sudden there was like a pop, 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 like loud, like cracking. I was like sudden rush of endorphins, like hormone. It just and like flushed, you know. And she's like, step back. Did I just break your back? What happened? I don't think anyone probably ever experienced that. Really, like, I don't know if anyone's ever experienced that, like, on either side, like my either side of that. It was the sacral joint. Like I said again, like our spine goes down, and then like basically where our butt cheeks are, there are joints there. They're not very flexible. They don't move much, but there are joints. You know, they move a little bit between the back and so the left one was just like almost bone. It was like the bones had just become one almost. You know, but through what I was doing and the chiropractor, and then this final just and it moved. So I get up. Not yet. I basically like end up crawling to the bed, laying there for like an hour. Um, but as I'm laying there and I start to move, I'm like, my hips are moving in a way that I haven't in years. I didn't realize that I had lost, you know. I had talked about it now through this, like in hindsight, it was that all the time, but like this was the moment when I realized that this was the thing all along that was causing everything else. And yeah, it moved. And so the next time I stood up, I stood up and I was like, my hips. Whereas before it was more, you know. Now it's I couldn't like shift my hips back and forth. I couldn't dance, you know, like I needed to or wanted to, you know. I even remember being at a wedding and when it was locked like that, and actually dancing a little bit some, and that I think it was in 2013 when I was like before the hip surgery when I was like and I was like dancing and stuff, but that left sacral joint was still locked up at that time, but it wasn't like my body wasn't so damaged from it yet. But even that time I felt like my movement was restricted in that way, but I could still find a way to find joy and happiness and fun and get around. But at the whole time, my right side was paying the price because the left was locked there. So I end up. Um, so after that moved, I was a new person. You know, things started to come back. But here was the problem: my body got used to that. So now suddenly my body is moving. So my left leg, down the whole left IT band. The IT band is now had basically hadn't moved, you know, didn't have much range. Now the body's begging it to range, you know. So it took maybe like 6 months longer for this, like to for my left leg to adjust enough that it wasn't an excruciating pain whenever I was doing activity. So now I suddenly have to like come back and do new physical. And like imagine going up to any physical therapist with all of this and being like, hey, what do you recommend? You know, they don't. They don't have a 2 hour conversation. I can't have a 2 hour conversation with them in a 5 minute meeting before the 15 minute point. You know, it was just there was no help. You know, there was no system for me. You know, um, yeah. You know, in Iron Man, Tony Stark had a uh, had like a team of doctors to figure out how to like get his recovery back. You know, and build back and all. You know, and he would talk. You know, and I felt like that's what I needed. You know, I needed like a team of doctors to be around me that I could talk to for hours, and you know, it would have been that much of a cost and necessity to that could have got me through that quicker. You know. All this did make me a little bit like aware that the medical industry doesn't always know what they're talking about and skeptical. Um, but also that there's parts that are so important and necessary. And I ended up finding integrated doctors who kind of had the same belief, you know, and those ended up being my doctors from then on. Um, I would always look for the integrated doctors. Uh, and I'd have to move around sometimes, so I'd end up with different doctors, different places, different therapists, and it was hard to keep a, you know, like just have to drive an hour and a half to the same doctor when I can't even drive myself to somewhere, and it was tough trying to keep it all together. So so yeah, when was that happened? My daughter was probably 1 when that happened. And I finally got my like left sacral joint unlocked. I think she was 1, so that would have been like 2017, like the beginning of 2017. And so yeah, from 2012 to 2017, 5 years, I just went. It was a lot. And then after that, still because now I'm raising a child while still coming back from all this, with that. And I didn't know at that point, even still, like, so this is moving well, but what's going to happen? What does this mean? Like I'm almost lost my stability in a way because at least that left part was stable. So now like everything's moving a lot, and at least the right's getting relief, but um, so yeah, eventually the hernia started to heal better, but I ended up taking a biotin supplement, and I think that helped. I think because I do think my body still like over it over cleans up, cleans up like dead tissue too well. When I exercise and work out and I build muscle, you form the scar tissue and it builds up, but my body breaks it down pretty quickly again. And So I do think that my body's kind of, I do have some underlying thing where my body does kind of attack its own tissue a little bit, but it's so minimal. And as long as I'm doing everything, as long as I'm taking all the precautions I need and doing all the life hacks that I know, um, I can keep it at bay. And the only real repercussion is like it's hard to put on keep muscle because of it, and also because my my back is still like, even though I got that moving, my the vertebrae that come out of the, like there's that the pelvis connects to the tailbone and the vertebrae all the way up. So I already have arthritis in that area, like the low back, sacral joint area is all arthritic. I don't have active arthritis there, but there's the signs of arthritis that existed there. Um, and I had bulge disc in that lower back. So in 2012, I also got diagnosed with a bulge disc, like in the lower back. Um, and it would come back sometimes, the bulge disc, but mainly I was able to treat it. And then, but it's almost like my bones grew in that time period to the adjustment. So as I was doing all this healing, my body healed to the sacral joint that was locked and kind of created a new system around it. So now that was moving, my body had to try to create a new system, like figure it out again. So and it's not like everything was just going to suddenly line back up perfectly again. So like this was still like that. So as this moved, it kind of like, and then this, so I ended up with almost like a big C through here. Like my spine kind of through here comes too much this way now. I'm exaggerating. It's not that much, but it comes and then back again. So even in here, through all the chiropractors I had and stuff, at some point one of the vertebrae, it feels like it got twisted. I know that's crazy to like. I had someone say it's not possible, but like two of my vertebrae I can feel like they're like they're like this next to each other. Like the bony protruding part. Like like they're like a little bit off. Um, like in through here. So I'm always having, even now still, I constantly have to like make sure I'm loose enough and that everything's moving, that the vertebrae aren't fusing back together, because they want to just constantly like stabilize by fusing together. But I got to move enough to like, so they don't. So I don't, I still have some sort of underlying that's causing my, and there was one of the last conditions they sent me to look for was ankylosing spondylitis, AS. And that was because of the way my back formed and the arthritis in the sacral joint and all that. But again, it's hard to get a diagnosis for something when you're masking it all with self-care in a way that the markers don't show up in the blood work. So basically, I mean, I always kind of knew like, oh, maybe I'll just like, stop doing all the good things I do and let myself revert so I can get the diagnosis, you know? 'Cause then I could at least get the help. Um, but I realized at some point, I guess it was in 20, I think in 2015, I applied for disability, but I didn't get it until, no, I applied in 2014, but I didn't get it until 2017. I mean, I didn't get the check until 2017. I got it in 2016, at the end of 2016. No. Yeah. Yeah, I got approved then in 2016, and I got the check in 2017. Started getting like disability and Medicare and all that. You know, I had worked enough in my life that I got Medicare, not Medicaid. So it was like, you know, when you retire and you get your what you paid in. So that's what I was drawing from the amount of money I paid in from working for like, how long was I working? 15 years. So yeah, I worked like 15 years, and so you know, I was just like a retired person pulling the money out, you know, for my necessities. Um, but it wasn't that much because I mostly worked in service, and even with my business, I put everything reinvested back into it. Didn't have much, you know, earnings, um, so I didn't get much, even though I worked my ass off most of my life. And but yeah, that disability helped me a lot. Getting the once I got it in 2017, and it's, I mean, it's funny that my sacral joint unlocked around the same time I got the first check, basically. Um, and everything from there was on an upward journey. And it was kind of nice as I did have a baby, you know. So I was at home with her the first year and a half, like, and you know, I wasn't preoccupied with much else because my life kind of sucked, you know, and I couldn't do too much. So sitting there with this beautiful little baby that just thought the world of me, and me, her, like, you know, restored my heart, and it, uh, she, you know, like picking up a little baby, it's a little extra weight, you know. So like I'm getting stronger, and um, she basically just lived on me for like a year and a half, like here. Um, so yeah, once my sacral joint started moving, I was overdoing it a little too much. Like I got the money, so I was planning on that. So I got an RV. I was going to a tiny house, and I was getting help with it, but the helpers weren't really helping. You know, I mean, they were not reliable. Like I think one was a he had alcoholish. I think he had his own physical issues and alcoholism he was dealing with to cope with it. And but anyways, you know, like you look for helping people, but you end up finding, you know, people dealing with the same problems. You know, like just life issues, and everyone's going through it. You know, it's not just me. Um, I can't compare that. People, it's hard to. I don't like comparing because there was just so many nights where I went to sleep not knowing if I'd wake up, that exhausted, that physically in pain, like that. I was like, I just felt like my body would stop breathing, like stop being able to breathe. I was so weak and so fatigued. And in those moments, I probably wasn't that close yet, but I could imagine, you know, that was the future. That was, I could see that, like, that's what was happening. I was going to be at a point where I couldn't lift myself out of bed, and I could barely breathe. I could barely, like, have the muscle strength to breathe or beat my heart. Until you've been that weak, you just don't know. But yeah, so I was getting better. And one of the good things is, like, taking care of a baby when you've been that weak and you see them, they're this vulnerable thing that just is like, so how is the best fucking dad? Because, like, I just knew, you know, I knew I was like her little physical therapist, you know, like I could just get the legs working and get the arm, and she was just so like just we just did so well together. We did really well together. It was beautiful. And yeah, so as she got bigger, I kept being able to, even now, she's like 80 something pounds, and she can run and jump at me, and I can catch her and hold her now. Like that's, whew, I didn't think when I had her and she was young, I was like, at some point she's going to outgrow me and I won't be able to be the dad I want to be. And I still have those moments where I can't be all the things I have to remind her sometimes that I'm still broken. I still have problems because I'm so capable in her eyes so much of the time. So yeah, some nights I still go to bed and I still have some like feelings through here where I'm like, okay, tomorrow I need to make sure I take my biotin supplement. I need to rest a little more. I need to not eat any like chips or fries or anything like that. Um, it's a weird thing to say, but like candies and chips. Like I eat mostly whole food plant based. I can't do the animal fats at all. They just immediately give me like I get a really extreme inflammation really quick from it, and the sinus stuff too. But I can do sugar and stuff, so I can do like some candies and things. But again, those I can't. Like it weighs on me over time. Um, and also just in general, like I could eat a lot of like nuts and like nut butters and things like that and put on some weight. But when I do, I get the same kind of not as quickly, but from the animal fats, I still get a certain thing. So my like my body fat percentage is a good way to track it for me. If my body fat percentage goes up too much, I have a hard time physically. My muscles don't function like they should and stuff. So I do have to keep in shape to survive. I have to keep my body fat low, but also you can't have too low body fat when you don't have enough muscle because the way we use calories, our muscles actually store. So you can see I'm actually getting some muscles. I haven't worked out. I've been doing pull-ups, but I haven't done pull-ups in like maybe a month, 3 weeks or so. But our muscles store the sugar. So when we exercise or when we need the calorie, our body takes it from our muscles and uses it, or we just use it straight from in our muscle. Um, and one thing with keeping low body fat when you don't have much muscle storage is you can run out of calories like really quickly or suddenly. So I was, I had to keep on some extra weight just to, not for those days that I was nauseous or having stomach pains or it's still, I'm misaligned. I'm never going to be perfectly aligned in my back, and that means any activity I'm going to do is going to pull in different ways unevenly and maybe cause more bulging. So even this summer, I was getting to a point I was doing so well that I went to my mom's and did some yard work, a lot of yard work. I got like a mini skid and was like, using that and getting out and shoveling. So like, I wasn't just shoveling. I was like moving, picking up stones and moving them. Like I did like 40 hours of manual labor, hard manual labor across like a week, and felt good. But I ended up bulging a disc in this area during it. I kept pushing through even though I knew it was bulged, and I was getting like a numb spot that I kept getting more and more and more and more numb. And all right, I gotta stop and let this heal before I do really serious long term damage. You know, so um, but it was funny because like my back kind of like expanded a little bit more just from that 1 week of work. Like uh, I got like upper body like my really grew quick. Um, and but I had to heal the bulge disc, so I I didn't lose it, but I like I put it on and lost it, and that's kind of how it's been, putting on losing, putting on losing. But the funny thing is, your muscles stay strong even though even though your muscles might shrink a little bit in size. more of the strength remains than you realize. Like it's not always about like muscle size isn't always the best indicator of strength. Um, Sometimes it just means you're tearing it and building it back with like and adding layers of fat in with it and stuff that makes it bigger. But like you can add fat inside your muscles to make them bigger. That's what they kind of do. Bodybuilders and stuff do that a little bit. And then they cut and try to get rid of it all. But see, the fitness industry is so full of like that, like how to get cut in these extra little hacks. And I'm like, no, my life hacks are like how to survive and how to like live more efficiently and with less pain. And um, so the way I eat, I don't just eat whole food plant based. I do eat what I want. I do enjoy my foods, and I do, I eat bread, and I eat oats, and I eat, cereals, not like sugary cereals, but like, I might add, I might eat a cereal that has like half as much added sugar as a regular one. Actually, I don't know how much regular sugar is in regular, or how many. I don't know about that. But like I do a little added sugar. I don't do no added sugar at all, and I do oil. I don't do no oil at all, and I do some cooked oil. I don't do only raw oil, or meaning only cold pressed oil. I do cook some foods too, because there's different aspects of health that like I know cooked foods aren't. The thing about cooking foods and stuff is it creates AGEs and acrylamide, and there's these compounds that like age us, but and it shortens our telomeres, but um, so we actually do get cellular aging from the different types of ways we eat. But sometimes I just need some easy calories and I want to enjoy my life a little bit. So I do enjoy my food. I do enjoy things. But I also make those sacrifices so that when I do have that moment of something I do miss and enjoy, the nostalgia, or just like want to be satisfied with some food in the moment, or maybe I'm out at some thing and I want to taste something that somebody made, or I want to go to this new restaurant that has some options that fit my diet style. Um, I can go do those things. I can go, on a date and like just, eat whatever meal I want. It's not gonna like kill me, but my daily habits, I do have to make sure I'm getting like, I follow something like called the Daily Dozen. I don't follow it exactly, but it's a couple servings of fruit. Make sure one of them are berries. A couple servings of beans as for protein, or sometimes I'll do the plant meats instead. Um, that's one thing I do too much sometimes. Is too much of the plant meat and not enough beans when I get into like a rut of like busy working and stuff. Which is funny because my spice business. It's funny because my spice business is that like cooking beans and stuff. But it's true. Like people would comment about that, like, oh, I have a hard time, like cooking as much. I just end up relying on the easy stuff. And the funny thing about my spice business was that I loved making the big soups and stews, but it was always too much food, and it would go in my freezer, and I'd have too much. And for the average customer, they it makes sense for them to do that once in a while and have some leftovers. So it's a good tool. But like as someone who's like always making these recipes and fine tuning them, I would just have so much extra soup and food and stews, and I'd have to like it was just such a waste because like I tried to give them away, but like I was struggling to work already and cook already, and then trying to like put all these portions together for people to like I go into my workplace, I go into my business and like give my workers like stews to take home to try, like new recipes and ones I had made and stuff. But at some point I started doing that less and less just because I was not cooking as much because I was doing so much work, and I was able to start to eat some of the reliable plant meats and stuff like that again, because those don't give me the same issues as the regular meat. Um, so, because plant meats are basically just beans that this video is getting long, but basically plant meat, if you just like took a bunch of beans or grains and blended them up, and then like made a dough ball, and then put that in water and just kneaded it in the water, starch would come out. Carbohydrates come out of it into the water because it just forms in the water well, and you just get rid of the water, and then you're left with protein. It's very simple. It's easy making bread. But anyways, yeah. So those are and they add a little oil to them and stuff. And sometimes when you cook them, you can fry them or add like saute them or whatever. So the sauces sometimes have oil and sugars and stuff. So it's just a familiar like nice thing. I love a lot of different types of foods, and you'd be able to spice things differently. And, you can't always spice. Like I spice beans really well, but sometimes I want to spice some dense protein, in a different way that I missed from before. So I do that. But then we can all fall into that too much, and get away from the right way to eat. And now my sinus stuff will come back sometimes, and I will get like, yeah, I notice when I've been eating too much. What I say junk, but it's really like not comparatively too junky. So yeah, I'm still really careful with the way I eat. I'm still careful about the way I move and my physical, how much physical toll I'm willing to take on. I have to be very careful about. So even still now, like I'm doing better, but like if I commit to something and end up pushing myself too far in it, I could still end up, not able to function, not able to work with, bulged discs that get worse, or, if I don't have the time to recover after something happens, and I have to just like keep, working like a regular job like people do, I wouldn't be able to. So I still do have a disability. It's not as bad as it was, but I mean, before it was like, oh, I'm not going to survive this for past a few more years. It felt like, um, and then now I'm like, yeah, I could probably, I don't know. I've seen other stories of people who have had not like just like mine, but people who survived a stroke at a young age, and then, um, not many of them live past their 70s. So I kind of know that, um, my body's already taken a big toll. I did use medical marijuana through a lot of my health stuff, um, for appetite, because I had such physical pain, and it was hard to eat. So I wouldn't always be on it, but I would go on and off. And I think I had been actually using it recreationally a little bit. I know I had been recreationally using it a little bit when I had the business. I was in the restaurant industry, and restaurant industry is kind of notorious for that. So, it's just, I mean, people offer and whatever. And at that time, I think I was using it as a sort of like, because I was going, like, at the time, I was using it more recreationally, you know. But then I wondered, like, did it contribute to my stroke? So I was always careful with it because I didn't want it to like make things worse, just like any other medicine I was taking. I didn't want to over rely on it, or not see the, I need to see the pros and the cons in it, right? So yeah, um, yeah, I'd go off and on of it, and it's also an expense. So if I could limit the expense, I would. So anytime I didn't need it, I would try not to spend the money on it. And I did use it sparingly. I wasn't, using it recklessly. I think one of the things that, so by about 2019, the year 2019, I felt like I was ready to try to do something, um, get some independence, and I had the business idea. So my idea was just to like launch the business and then get help and kind of not run it, not take the lead this time, but like, you know, mentor others through it and consult others through it, and kind of like basically like like start it off and then replace me quickly. Um, and I did. I was constantly trying to look for my replacement the whole time, but I never found anyone that could do what I did for the money or the as well, as quickly or as confidently or as capable. So yeah, I never was able to find anyone as capable, still in that role. Um, willing to do it for that, for nothing, like, but equity. Um, think I was kind of naive too, and I probably should have looked into more and tried to understand more how like capital works and venture capital works and how who's willing to, and maybe I should have found those partners before starting the business instead of trying to do it that way, like launch it and then that. But I was in a relationship at that time, and that person was my kind of person for those things. I thought I could rely on. But I launched that Kickstarter, and during it, like I, as it was already running, I had another accident. I mean, something just fell on my leg, but it was enough to like put me out of commission for a couple months with the left leg. And then because of that, my right side was always the issue, right? And like the way the pelvic joints and all that. So like now, if I'm suddenly compensating, staying off this, trying to put more on this, when it happened with my right calf gave out because I wasn't healed enough yet. This is 2019, and my body was still slowly coming back and figuring out reorienting and everything. Um, so yeah, my right calf seized up, and that's when a doctor, and this was 2019, yeah, he sent me to the ER. I went into a walk-in clinic, and he sent me to the ER because he thought it was a blood clot, or he said it's either a blood clot or ALS. And I'm like, I already did the ALS thing. It's not that. He's like, well, maybe a blood clot. Go check it out. And it wasn't a blood clot. And I was like, well, why would my right calf just like seize up and stop? Like I couldn't even walk on it anymore for like a month, a couple months. I couldn't walk on my right calf at all during this time. And I ended up getting a knee scooter for my right side and needing a knee scooter on my right side for a while as that healed. And they asked like, what did you do to like injure it so badly? And I was like, I walked from the bedroom to the kitchen. That was it. That's all that was going on. But during this time, I had been I launched the Kickstarter. I had the thing fall on my leg. I got broken up with, and then I still had a child, like 3 days a week. So, um, yeah, I mean, just and a child that was old enough to be running around and needing activity and stuff. So I kept being too active during this time because I'm trying to get a business going. I'm on my own without someone, without the the family dynamic, having two people in a house. It even when it's harder, it's easier. Um, Sometimes it's not always emotionally easier, but physically it's easier. So, and I was living with my brother who has medical issues too. So, but yeah, it was tough because I was trying to do more everything, and I seemed to be doing better. So everyone was kind of like trying to make me do more, too. So I was doing more social stuff, and I was doing more with my activities with my daughter and making new friends and trying to find people for the business while also like going and getting like going doing more. I didn't even have a car for years during this time because I really couldn't drive much. I had sold mine soon after hip surgery. Um, so yeah, 2019, try to do the business. Just life feeling like it's falling apart in a different way this time. Just when I thought I was like at a point that I could like, like things were gonna work out, and I was gonna get out of the hole. Um, kind of got pulled back into it. Um, and I don't want to talk about that partner too much I had then, but they were dealing with their own depression and postpartum stuff, and uh, I can't get too mad at anyone else's like mental struggles, that they're experiencing that made mine harder. Um, but it's a real thing that happened. I need to at least mention that. And I dealt with it. So when after the Kickstarter, I was separated from my daughter. I used to have her, 6 days a week, some, 6 or 7, depending on if I had help one day or not. Most like 3 out of 4 times, 3 out of 4 weeks, I had one day free. But suddenly, I'm on my own entirely, even like at night. 'Cause before I had the overnights where I didn't have to like get up in the night or like be woken up throughout the night and I could still get rest and stuff. So it was a lot. It was a sudden shift to try to do things a little differently. And um, when I had an injury to the left leg, and then suddenly the right gave out because as the left was healing, luckily the left healed before the right gave out. That would have been terrible both. But so yeah, I so yeah, yeah, it was just I kind of ended up back in that same environment where I was doing too much when my body couldn't let me. Um, in some ways, that X protected me from that. In some ways, protected my like me from doing too much. Um, but was like protective of me doing too much with others, but was like doing too much with me in a different way, like just not getting enough sleep and trying to someone takes care of your physical a little bit, and you try to take care of their mental health a little bit, and it was just kind of a trade off relationship. We tried to be there for each other, and I don't think either of us was actually able to be there for each other enough the way either really needed. Um, and but enough to like you know it's hard to I don't like want to give someone too much credit for something that might have happened independently, because I was already on that course of recovery and everything, and someone else kind of walked into it, and then I'm not going to let them own that. That was mine still. I wanted to recover physically. Not everyone wants to recover with the mental health. Some people are want to stay who they are regardless of how that is. I shouldn't say so much. Yeah, just ignore that. I don't know. I'm not going to diagnose someone else and all that. Okay. Just yeah, let them be and tell you who they are. So yeah, I was trying to get that business going in 2019, but it didn't go so well, and I wasn't doing well. And I this was in December, and I started to make the products, and I got some help, but it wasn't enough money. I didn't raise enough money, and I underpriced them. And I think the main thing was I underestimated the shipping costs and had such medical need after the breakup that I paid myself some of the funds just to survive. Not like an actual manager salary or anything, but like enough to survive and get through and work as well. Whereas, I kind of underestimated how much I was going to need through that because I was suddenly, it was like I did the Kickstarter, but then now I'm on my own. So yeah, I kind of ran out of funds while doing it. But so towards the end there, the last like week, I was out there in the garage, like putting them together myself, ziplocking myself. I was like on my feet, like like one leg kind of the other up a little bit. I had this knee scooter. I would scoot out there, and I would stand there, and I was doing all this, and I did probably even so. We went on this trip, and like the night before that trip, I was up till like 2 a.m. making sure all the products were put away and like sealed up and everything, so that way I wouldn't lose them, because I would have lost all the work. And, would have been done. So, um, so yeah, even like the last couple of days, I just overdid it, and then suddenly I had to like go leave for this trip the next morning, like early, and I did too much. I should have just said, "Hey, I can't go on this trip. I'm too fucked up physically, and I've been doing too much, and y'all don't really understand my health or what I need enough, and I don't feel like I'm going to be taken care of on this trip, me or my daughter, in the ways I need." And I didn't say all that though. I just went along because that's the family dynamic that I still was kind of in, like I just go along and I take the brunt of whatever comes along and I'm the yes man. So I still hadn't really figured out how to like speak up for myself. And on that trip, I spoke up for myself a little too much. Um, but also, it was a accumulation of all of it because, like, um, that trip broke me. Because I was still so fucked up and been through so much. This little baby, she was almost 3, but so protective, and we had our ways and methods of like that we did these things and survived through, and we needed things to be a certain way, and everyone else had their way they needed things to be, and it just didn't mesh. My physical problems didn't mesh with everyone else's ways. But like I said again, like I don't know where everyone's at now with my family and all that, but like I didn't know how to talk about all this with people, and my family didn't know how to talk about it, and sometimes it's easier just to act like it's not happening or cover it up or just like I don't know, but I didn't ask for help as much as I should have, and I'm not gonna blame anyone for why that is, but it's the way it was. But yeah, I almost didn't survive this over and over and over again. Not because of a lack of will, because I always had the will. But that's people would act like that, like act like I didn't have the will to survive, like it was just like I was being hopeless or not. I didn't have like I with the drive to get through this. And it's like just because you don't see the wins that I'm having doesn't mean there aren't wins. It doesn't mean that like just because you can't feel the physical toll and the restraint and the patience that I've had to endure to just overcome my own like to not let my body tighten up and stroke out, like just the patience I had to master for that. And then for other people not to come at me with that patience and not have that patience with me or themselves. Um, yeah, I lost patience with other people who didn't have show me patience. So yeah, as much as I was trying to master all that, we all, no one is fully in control of everything, all of their emotions, or all of their control of their body like they think. But yeah, I spent uh, beginning part of 2020 living back in my RV again uh, for a little while without power and for a while without any hot water at all. So I was taking like cold showers in the middle of winter. And surprisingly, I healed really well during that time because I finally had isolation. And I was so bad physically and mentally that I had asked. And because my RV it had not been put up right and there was some air quality issues that I was worried about. So I didn't have my daughter around as much. And I finally got like the break I needed just to like recover. And I stopped smoking weed during that time too. I had been actually I didn't use it for like when my daughter was young for a while, but then I used it again during the leg stuff and the separation anxiety and stuff with my daughter. I needed it for a few months, but then I went off it again, and I was going off of it, and I use it for appetite too, so it messes with my appetite when I well let's just say like I don't need it for appetite, but when I'm coming off it, it really I lose weight. So um, so yeah, I was like all that. I was coming off. I was like healing from all of it, coming off, detoxing, but I getting weaker. I was like not weak, but like I I just allowed my body to heal in the ways that I new and just didn't do anything. I fed myself, and I would go walk the neighborhood occasionally, like as much as I wanted, nothing more. I'd sit outside under a tree. I'd lay in the grass and look at the sky. Um, I would do my other things, the qigong. I would do sorts of like qigong and yoga and stuff that always help, but like not push it too much. And but yeah, once I finally had like no one else, I wasn't living with anyone else. I was in my own space, my own, and even though I was penniless, like I was you know near homeless, like I was a month late on rent and had nothing in my account and on food stamps and not sure I was going to happen the next month, and still had all this inventory that was just there that I hadn't been able to ship for the business yet or anything. Um, and I did try to go out and do some markets and stuff to sell some inventory to recoup some money so I could like get things going again. And when I did that, one Kickstarter like called the markets and accused me of fraud for like selling the inventory that I had made with the Kickstarter money. But Kickstarter is like it's to kickstart the business, and then with the promise that you're going to give them something later. But like a lot of businesses, a lot of Kickstarters don't ever, like they get the money and they fail, and then no one ever gets anything. It happens. Um, that's not what I was trying to do. I was trying to get the business to a point that I could. I was trying to just survive and then get to that. I still had that obligation that I was very much wanting to fulfill. Um, Not ready just to like throw it all away. So yeah, I did do a little bit then, but not much. Really, just enough to like pay a couple bills, and keep going. Maybe sold like a couple hundred units out of like the thousands that were there. And I did end up having to sell those in markets and stuff because I couldn't ship them legally. So I ended up having to like make new products and ship those, and kind of like these would just fly out of the ways. Um, for sample, I use them for samples and stuff like that too. But because yeah, I originally made the ones in the garage, which is a cottage law. It's allowed. It's fine. It's safe for seasonings to be made in your house, and that's all. You're just not supposed to ship them over states. So, um, so yeah, so in 2020, like COVID hit, right? So that was the thing too. COVID hit, and like suddenly everyone was like locked down, but I'm like, I was already locked down basically, so it didn't really affect me as much. Instead, I was actually able to sell the RV. I got this RV like fixed up finally enough to the point I could sell it. Um, 'Cause I was still doing stuff then. I wasn't like doing nothing, but it was just like the not having everyone else's influences and impacts and telling me this or that or to do this or that or controlling and moving me in different directions that they think I should. Um, yeah, I just finally had that peace of mind, and I healed the best then. And then I ended up selling the RV for about 7,500, getting and using that money to find a place to make the rest of the products. And I actually found a place that I was able to make him a partner in the business just for the rent instead of paying rent, and then I was able to use that money for shipping and stuff instead, and making new products and all that. So yeah, so I got the business going. Um, it still wasn't moving that much. When I started the business, I needed help, and I did rely on other people to do the physical labor. But I almost lost it again because products weren't being made right, and we almost lost them all. And I lost like a few weeks of labor just from like them not being done well and not being able to be in there physically myself. So yeah, the business almost failed so many times because of just my inability to be there as the person that needed there to be the one to lead it. Um, but little by little, I kept getting better and being able to be there more and more and more. But I would still hit a point where I was like doing too much, and then I would crash. Uh, and with the business, luckily, it was kind of seasonal, meaning like we were so busy for like some months that I was able to like really like do months of recover, and then months of like really hard, not as hard as last time with my other business, but like hard for what I was going through. Um, so I don't think I ended up taking the biotin until like 21 or 2021, 2022 maybe. Yeah, I think I was taking the biotin in 2021, and then by 2022 it was like it felt like it was working. Like the I stopped getting the hernias as much. So when I was doing the business and trying to that, like, I was still having the issue where I would get the hernia into testicular torsion that would still happen sometimes. Less and less rare, but it was still there. And then, and it wasn't as much that at that point because everything was moving back. Suddenly it became okay. It's my back, it's my breathing, and everything kind of came up too much. Not too much, but like, as I'm solving problems, it's I'm getting older too, and dealing with these issues more and more. So even now, I do have to still be careful not to overdo it and put myself out of commission. And that was it. I'm running a business, right? And if I do too much, then that next week I won't be capable. So I really have to protect myself to make sure I can keep doing the necessary work. And then only would I would really step up more when I need. But I actually did with the business. I did most of the shipping, not always entirely myself, but like me and one other person, or me or a couple people, or sometimes it was just me, like putting the products in the boxes and shipping them because orders go out wrong, it was catastrophic. So that's something I couldn't let have bad happen. So I always kind of had my hands in shipping and was always doing the shipping aspect of it. Uh, and Um, but yeah, I mean, once I started to be able to lift those, like, we'd put like an order of like a box of them, put like 30 of those boxes in a big bag, and then bring that to the post office. I got to the point that I was able to pick up those big bags and put them in the car and stuff myself. Not all of them, but like, one, and then each time a little more, each week a little more. To the point that once I was over here in Lakeland with the business, I relocated over here to be close to my kid's school when she started kindergarten. Um, so yeah, once I got over here, I was able to do more and more where I could like load my car full with like 400 orders and bring it to the post office and drop it off. Uh, so it felt good to get back to the point that I could actually like do the work again like that and the physical side of it again. And but I'm not going to go into the whole why the business in the end, all that. Okay, but it was a partnership, and but it wasn't. It was my business that I just had to keep someone else informed on and included in because I felt like I owed them. Um, and the partnership ended up killing the business. So I mean, I got broken up with during the Kickstarter, so I maybe should have just returned the money immediately and not done all that and just gone and found a job. That's what I should have done then because it would have saved me a lot and I would have recovered better. I could have, yeah. Because even though I have a better stress management and I'm more patient now and I'm not as like hustle, 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 doesn't mean it still isn't a hustle, and I still didn't hustle. I still was hustling more than I should have been during the entirety of the business. Yeah, because I ended up with a frozen shoulder for like a year and a half from like 2022 to like 2024 almost. My left shoulder froze and I could barely do this. And then finally I got it to like here and here and here and here. And then for like the last, I don't know, like few months, it was like here. Finally I got it all the way. But now I still have to worry. I still have to be careful because it can come back because of the scoliosis. That's why it kind of caused from that. So, um, yeah, just too much heavy lifting, too much sustained of anything can cause me issues. So, um, I really need like centering activities. So like too much driving. So like centering activities like rowing. I need to like I should probably get a row machine. I'm trying to build my legs back with centering activities. So yeah, and I have my legs have like grown. Like they were really really thin for a while. Now they're getting back. So um, I still don't have my old shape, but um, I have a shape now at least. So um, yeah, and 2.5 hours to talk about the whole health journey because it was a fucking lot. And there's probably still more that I just haven't talked about and all that because there's a lot of friends that I see you and I've been like watching you and your moments and uh I I'm here. I'm not gone. I just couldn't be there. I couldn't communicate because I didn't want to have to tell this 2.5 hour story to every friend in the middle of it, not really able to understand how to explain it all yet. Um, I mean, at each different point in this, how I just, and I don't know if anyone can understand because a lot of people around me just didn't understand, even now, still don't understand. I feel like even after this, I don't know who will understand because it was just such a crazy journey that's in here that you can only see from here. So yeah, so if I reach out to you, say what's up, and let me know if you watch this because I don't want to have to. I can't. I can't like talk to everyone like this, and I don't want to have this conversation all these times because it makes me emotional, and I can't go through those emotions every time. And that was part of it. Like I can't go through the emotions of like showing everyone how much I've suffered. It would have just made me more hollow to it and numb to it. So, and don't judge anybody who was in my life along these times because it was not easy on them either. Not because I was difficult. It wasn't easy on them because they lost something. A family member, a friend who was not the same, not as capable. A disability is not, you're not able, you're not the same. And there's all sorts of disabilities, all sorts of people deal with it from birth and on, different issues, different problems, different family support groups, different medical support, different, they didn't have to wait maybe 2.5 years to get disability. Maybe they did, maybe they waited longer. Like people didn't make, some of these people didn't make it. You're only seeing the survivor stories of people with disabilities and things like I am now. Like I don't want to be used as like a, oh, see, he got through it all. You can do it too. Yeah, of course, maybe, but like you got to help them. You can't just say like, well, everyone else is pulling themselves up by the bootstrap. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. A lot of people had a lot of help that you don't see, that they don't even recognize, and that I didn't like. I didn't always recognize the help I was getting in it because it wasn't enough. Like help is nice, but if that help is not the right kind of help and it comes with attachments, it it could not. It's not the solution. It's not a solution. Everyone wants like heartwarming, uplifting stories but there's so many that aren't. But people who are dealing with their own stuff so much they can't just sit through all the heartbreak of everyone around them, every stranger either. No one should just sit in the misery of everyone else. I didn't want to bring everyone down with my misery because it wasn't miserable, but it seemed miserable because it was so awful. But I navigated it with hope and effort and a will to survive and get better and become myself again, find myself again. I'm not going to try to sum this up with some like lesson in life or anything because there's so many life lessons. But yeah, I just hope that you understand a little more what I've been going through. And as I do the next thing I'm going to do, I hope you can understand a little more what brought me there and see I still have so much care for this world and hope that things will get better. Um, Through my disability, I had a lot of time to sit and think and reflect on the problems of the world, but also find solutions. Because I was finding my own solutions to my own problems and with good success. Each little thing was a success. All these little successes added up into getting me back to the point I am now. And I've had other ones that are other successes that aren't really seen that are, and it's like predicting the world and understanding people and putting my economics degree to work while, you know, experiencing life and people and through work. Um, you know, going about a second business this time while disabled. Like there's a lot I learned, and those months I was actually in the RV by myself, I had like actually had some theories on astrophysics that even now AI is like confirming as like probable, and encouraging me to like publish my research. Um, but I want to get the economics stuff published and out there first because that's my main thing. That's more important than the theories of the universe. So, um, but yeah, that might seem a little crazy because I had a lot of time just to lock in. When I was a kid, I had that. When I was like a young up until like 4 or 5, like I was the type of kid that like kind of locked in, didn't wasn't very verbal. And I think I do well like that, like unseen, locked in, hiding, thinking, and I solve problems or just find solutions to things that weren't even really problems. Sometimes just you know, I'm always looking for answers to everything, any question that exists. So, but yeah, my policy about the robot tax actually isn't even really. It didn't start out as a robot tax. I really was just looking at labor and figuring out how to save labor, and found a like nice cool little trick that if we just I was I wanted to see the corporate tax change based off labor, so I tried different things to figure out how we could adjust that and change uh, make the corporate tax go higher or lower based on how much labor a company has compared to profits. And I found a cool way to do it. Um, yeah, so I'm going to be doing that, and it's going to revolutionize the world. It's going to change the world. It's going to have a huge, huge, huge impact on the world. Um, I'm going to be going to do like podcasts and stuff and talk about it. And anytime you're out there talking on podcasts and stuff comes up. So my health stuff will come up and all this. And I just wanted to have something out there because people are going to have questions about me and who and I am and my story, my journey, and it's a lot. It's not a 3 minute reel. So I'll probably post post this full through and not edit it too much. It's already super long, but
Well,
um, I have experienced a lot that people can learn from, and it would do no good for me just to sit quietly and not talk about it all, not tell my story, not talk about the things that led me to the ideas. So, uh, yeah, I hope you all can come back to this and see whatever, as I'm out there in the public, and if I get notability about this and public attention, there's going to be scrutiny, and everything about me will be get dragged through the mud. So um, I just hope y'all won't be the ones dragging me through the mud too. For my friends or my family, I just want you to know I love you and care about you all. I'm a little worried about the world and about you all. I'm less worried about what you all have to say about me and more worried about this world without me, without my idea. And it'd be nice to have everyone's support in this, but also I don't really need your all support in this because I can just go do it on my own. And I can go get the podcasts and I can get on things and I can do my own organization to raise money and to spread the word about this from people who are excited about it specifically and understand it specifically. So, um, don't support my ideas just because you know me. Support them because they're good ideas. So, um, but I just, I hadn't been very supportive to my community for a long time. At one point, I was a pillar of the community, and then suddenly I was in rubble myself. The ashes of what I had been, and I'm not quite ready to be the pillar of the community again. But I can at least show how we can have an economy that builds those pillars back, pillars of community. We're going to build those back, and these policies can make that happen. It can give people the missing purpose, the lack of income to take care of the things you need and be the provider you want, or to find the provider that you want, or whatever you're looking for in life. We've been robbed of opportunities because of a messed up economy that no one really understands. And I locked in and figured it out. So I survived it, and now I'm here to make it happen.